Mr. Elijah, what a blessing it is to have you here. I'm so excited.
I would love to show you where you are. Since I'm a co-host, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
So, actually, if I share it, it'll change the view, but
that's fine.
You'll still get a sense of where you actually are, which is on the mothership, the Band of Light mothership. You're on deck. So
I remember this or something very similar to this.
Yeah.
Dude,
this is my current view of you. I just thought I'd let you know, like it's really enjoyable from this end.
That's beautiful. I love it. And so physically, are you based in Hawaii still?
Yeah, I'm on the island of Kauai. Nice. I'm here.
The last time you and I connected, you were leaving Hawaii, if I recall. You're going away, so you came back. It's just you couldn't stay away, huh?
Well, it was timed. I was like, I think after 12 years or so, I was so full up on the Aloha that Hawaii was like, just get out of here and go share all of that, and we'll call you back when it's ready. And so it took actually 4.5, almost 5 years before I really got the deep call to come home to these islands again. I spent 2 years up in Oregon. I think we talked around that time.
That's probably it.
Yeah. And then, just like when this whole thing began at the beginning of this year, I was on kind of just about to leap out to a whole year of touring. And I had, pretty well booked out for the year. And I had my plane tickets, villa already paid for in Bali. I was heading to Bali, and then I saw everything closing down, as we all did. As I saw like these timelines, I was like, okay, not feeling that one. I don't know why. It's not a yes. And I just prayed on it. And within 24 hours, Kauai's voice came into my heart again. And I heard her for the first time in years whisper to me, like, come home, my child. And so, I just followed that call. And within 48 hours, I was back here on Kauai, and I've been here since March, just deep in the Dagobah Jedi training,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So listen, we'll just count this also as a part of the podcast. No official formal beginning. Like we're in it. This is already beautiful. Let's just be here now.
Great.
And
I like that.
and that's really, well, I mean, that's really beautiful. Like I see you doing a lot of like your full moon love streams and like just playing for people. What kind of stuff are you find yourself up to in addition to Jedi training? Like what is a day in the life of Elijah Ray like?
It really has looked like a deep commitment and devotion to music and sound as an alchemical process, more so than just, hey, let's jam and have a good time, which I love to do. I have kind of over the decades of my life now gotten to this point with music and sound that is actually one of the greatest ways that I know how to address dissonance, challenges, both individually, collectively. So the fact that we're literally going through the gauntlet as a species right now, I'm finding that, just it's almost like when this whole COVID started, and you just could feel the chaos, the fear, and the noise in the collective psychic field, right? We all felt that. It was like
there's a lot of it.
Very sensitive and very empathic, intuitive. It's a lot to feel. And my response in times of chaos is to get really empty and really still. And so I started fasting. I started, going into deeper levels of entrainment and attunement with my health, with my body, things that I had kind of been hanging out in the background, like, oh, I'll get to that, at some point, but I'm so busy. I'm just going to keep going. It's like all of a sudden it just brought right here in front of our faces. Like, what is important? Are we growing our own food? How is the condition of our hearts, of our physicality? Are we in coherence first and foremost? And so to me, I just felt like it was my almost responsibility to address some areas of my life that were just slightly out of tune. So that was like step one. It's just like, how can I really take a look at my personal garden, my relations, and like I said, the condition of my heart, because it's not something I hear talked about a lot. But when it comes to being in tune, or when it comes to being in alignment with our soul's assignment, really taking care of our heart like a garden, like a gardener or a guardian, right, of this realm, means to have this thing both open but also in tune. And so much easier to say than to feel in times of great chaos, right? But that's our work, is literally, can we take this chaos field and distill it into something harmonic that is true and resonant to us? And so for me, some of the most profound ways that I get there is through sound, through music, and through communion with nature. And so to answer your question more succinctly, a day in the life of Elijah generally looks like waking up, making rainbow tea, moving my body a little bit, walking across the street. I'm lucky to live across the street from the ocean, so all I have to do is walk out my door and I could dive in the deep blue waters. And so I feel like those codes are what keeps me nourished and connected to Gaia's heartbeat in these times. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think just you heard the call at the very beginning of it to be there, which was something that I've seen on both sides of the spectrum. Some people did that and are in a really good place, and others, have to weather the storm inside of a cramped apartment, for all this time, and how difficult that must be. And my heart goes out to them. But also then, like for you, being able to take that energy from the ocean and that energy of where you're at and produce the music that you do, and the live streams, and just like the space that you create. It's really like a very generous and noble act to, that you're doing, of like giving that energy to others who might not be in the same position. So, I mean, thank you. Your music is really beautiful.
Thanks, brother. It's a balance. I'm finding that sometimes I touch these edges of a little bit of over giving and showing up on the screen too much. I start to notice depletion in other areas, like what we were just talking about in terms of, health, balance, connection, food, earth. Like, are my feet on the ground? Am I connected to something real and living? Because now that everything has, let's just say, accelerated, we don't need to get into any conspiratorial mindsets here, but it is interesting.
but we could.
But I'll frame it like this. It's interesting. Things that make you go, is that this whole thing that started has really accelerated our addiction and the necessity of screens and technology for connection, and you notice the de-emphasis on human connection. Stay 6 feet apart from each other. Don't let your heart's resonance fields get too close.
Cover your face.
Cover distance. And yet, here's some more screens to sit in front of. Here's some more incentives to get in front of these screens. And what are these screens doing to our consciousness, to the way we even cognate and navigate our reality, especially for kids? I'm thinking about what kids are growing up through right now. So I'm sensitive to that too. And I just want to put that out there, that I appreciate your words. And it does feel like the least I can do in these times is to just turn on the camera, go live, and just share as much as possible. But there is a balance to that too, where sometimes, I don't know about you, but I don't always want to be on a screen. So I want to look into a pair of human eyes, or just sit and look at the ocean, or listen to the birds, or just play my guitar for people like I used to do, so it's a very interesting and sensitive time to navigate the rightful use of technology and how to stay in balance with that.
Yeah, that is, I mean, you're speaking to the epitome of my biggest struggle right here and now, which is that I like listening to the call, hearing the call of just nature and spirit guiding me, like right before the lockdown happened, like before it was even a thing. I was called to move to the mountains in Canada away from everybody I knew and everything like that. But I'm in the mountains. I can go for a walk and I'm like in trails and trees, but I don't know anybody. And then it's lockdown, right? So my sense of a lot of the connection that I have is all with my team, and it's all on the computer. And I'm, building up this team. We've got like 3-4 animators, a team of editors. We're working on this, building an online school. So I spend so much time on the computer. And then when I need to take a break, I'm in the forest and the trees, and now I'm by a lake, which is perfect, but also like the only human connection that I really have with it's any sort of conscious conversation is all through a screen. So there is that like that in-person connection that is a little bit lacking, and it does get me a little unbalanced. I spend so much time on the computer that I've hurt myself a few times that my eyes get so sore. So I really get what you're speaking to. Like you're describing my challenge perfectly.
Right. I have a feeling most of us are in a similar boat right now, because that's just been, as we've had to adapt to this moment, save those revolutionaries who are just like, okay, screw this, I'm getting out there and whether it just be, gathering in the streets and kind of pushing back a little bit against this kind of fascist trend that we're seeing. It is interesting that most of us have just kind of, okay, we'll just go with this flow for a while. Although there's secret agent levels to that, where many of us who look like we're just going with the flow are actually co-creating alternate timelines within this whole game. So there's that too. But that's a whole nother conversation. But that being said, I just want to appreciate you and everyone who's listening to this right now, anyone who's hearing this, just to be so kind to yourself and extra compassionate. And especially when you're noticing waves of emotion or experiences rise up in you that are dissonant and challenging, just to be really kind to yourself, that we're not, as humans, meant to spend so much time in front of these radiation devices and these boxes and these screens. It's, so if you do have even a patch of grass outside your apartment building, as strange as it sounds, just like go and connect to it. Like just go and like do whatever you can to be a stand for life, anything that's alive. I noticed when I was in situations through my travels, sometimes the only connection to something alive would be like a houseplant, or like a few trees in the middle of a concrete parking lot, but there's something about making space inside of yourself for that interaction and that connection and that circuitry to make sure that stays alive and is nourished every single day as well. Because we're really in an interesting moment, and it feels like there's choices being made in terms of which paths we're going to go down, which timelines that we're engaged in and resonating with. And so I truly am praying for the highest option for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, where do you see us as a species, as a collective, and this path or many pathways that we're on? Like, I don't know if you're even like, giving mind or attention to, more of the, for lack of a better word, conspiratorial aspects of things, or even just like the news aspect of things. But like, where do you see this, human train going? Like where are the tracks leading us? And I mean, I don't know if that's a coherent question, but maybe you kind of get what I'm asking.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I hear you loud and clear. And to acknowledge the first part of your question, I absolutely do my best to pay attention to every possible storyline in the field. It's kind of like if you're, we show up like in Tron or something, like we're, okay, Ready Player One, we're porting into this realm.
Yeah.
We want to know who are all the players on the field. This is a really good thing to know, right? So that's why I really appreciate and love your recent series, into the conspiracy of everything. Is that what it's called?
A conspiracy theory of everything.
I love it, man, because it's so, I love the way that you've been approaching and the tone that these videos and these pieces have taken of just asking questions. this is not to be underestimated, the power of just asking questions, questioning things. That's like step one, right? Of just being open to the fact that beyond your world and the game that and the players that are in your world, there's a very big game board here, and there's a lot of different ideas about what kinds of games are being played in this realm. And so as a guardian or a gardener, which is kind of the same thing of this realm, we want to know who's in the garden and what's happening, which foxes are raiding the hen house at night and taking away the eggs, who's who and what's what, right? So I'll just say that first of all, you know, for many who have kind of come or been attracted to a lot of the new age communities, the spiritual communities, and just now it's just kind of called conscious community. There can be a tendency to just be addicted to only half of the sphere and wanting to stay up there in terms of the positivity, the love, and the light. And I don't want to focus on anything that's negative, and don't talk to me about conspiracies because I don't want to create that reality, right? So that's nice, but I kind of see that as like a step in our training. And as we grow in our capacity to hold space, we can actually occupy a larger sphere of awareness, which doesn't shut down all the other realities that are happening as well. It doesn't shut down our awareness to the other realities that are happening as well. But there's something to be learned from all of them. So that's a long way of saying what I really want to say, which is, yes, I pay attention to what the dark ones are up to. I pay attention and witness and do my best to stay so attuned to every ripple and disturbance in the force. Not unlike, you know, these mythoses, like, you know, when the Jedi are in council and they're in meditation, they're like, they can feel when a planet got destroyed. They can feel when, you know, there's a dissonant force rising up somewhere and causing ripple. We can feel that. And so I've attuned my body to be able to track those things, but it's a very fine line once you're aware of that, not to be so focused upon it that you yourself get sucked in and kind of dragged down, vibrationally speaking. And that is, I think, why many of us don't even want to go there, because as soon as you are aware that there's child trafficking, you know, running rampant in society, that there's all these horrible things, right? Things that would just don't feel good to be aware of. There can be a tendency to numb or bypass that. And I would, you know, just support everyone, especially the sensitive ones, especially those who are like just these pure earth creatures in human bodies. And you know, there's so many like beautiful souls that it seems like, wow, did we really sign up to feel and see all of this shadow stuff? And I feel like it's like a definitely yes, we did, because that's a part of what's going to help us be better gardeners, is to understand what's at play. And so now to the second part of your question, which is really a very big question in terms of where is this streaming? Where is the train rolling? You know, I feel, you know, studying some of the plans. It's like, if you want to get to know kind of what our challenges are, just listen and learn and study what are the leaders saying their plans are going to be. They're all written out. You can just kind of go online and just read word for word. Here's what's been planned, right? I went and bought a copy of Agenda 21, which is now rebranded as Agenda 2030, which is not a conspiracy. It's a book of a plan that the UN put out many years ago. And I think 192 countries signed it and said, yeah, this is a plan that we want to be behind. And I read it because I wanted to know what are, you know, these structures who are making decisions on behalf of lots of people planning. What are they all saying yes to? So I would like to know that in order to decide if I'm a part of that timeline, I want to support that, or if it's really important that we step up our game in creating alternate timelines. And that's what I found to be true when I just, you know, got off of the theory part of the conspiracies, right? And just what are the conspiracies? You know, not theory, but the actual plans that are being made. So it does seem like there is a very strong emphasis and with a lot of backing to merge humans with technology.
Yeah.
And so we've, a lot of us have heard this word transhumanism. And I would go so far as to say is anything that they're talking about doing has already been done and implemented on different levels. So for instance, the whole, microchipping humanity and even Elon Musk's company neural net, plugging everybody. It's like, it's kind of looking like the Matrix more and more as we get into this thing. But I would go so far as to say is that stuff's already pretty well integrated into humans. There's, if you research smart dust and some of the studies at MIT around, even some of the aerosol delivery of different synthetics, fibers, and other components that are even nanotech, that are self-organizing, that are pretty well introduced into the biosphere and into human bodies. It does seem like between our screens, our devices, cell phone tower, radiation, all of these different levels, these are all forming components of a larger structure to entrain us to become more integrated with technology and frequencies that are not natural to our biology. And yet there's a whole train of thought around this in the higher ups, from whether it's UN, Google, all of these leaders, that are basically kind of moving and in a way grooming us and grooming our psychology to accept that this is natural and even kind of cool to see these movies with like bionic arms and robot people. We've kind of been groomed to accept it. So where am I going with all this? I'm noticing that it's almost like here's a story or a trend or a timeline that's been introduced and is gathering momentum. It's gathering inertia. There's a lot of support. There's trillions of dollars being poured into it. And yet I also see in the more and more ridiculous that gets, the more extreme it gets, the more profoundly it's presented to us, those of us who carry the code as Earth guardians, as we know we're here to create the new Earth, to co-create what it means to be in new Earth communities and create a love-based culture and create infrastructures that are sustainable and in harmony with Gaia, in harmony with the sun and the stars, and be in harmony with this structure that is life itself. It's almost like oil and water. It's almost like, in the alchemical process, there's a bit of a you can feel there's a split in a way. And I'm very curious as to how we're going to handle these parallel timelines. And for me, where I see it going is that there's going to be more and more and more of us creating islands of coherence on land, on community infrastructures that are already in existence. This is already happening. I'm in connection with many of them who are putting all of their focus and energy and intention to creating these safe zones, if you will, or these islands of community and connection. While there are many others who are kind of moving along with this other timeline and getting more and more accustomed to this merging of technology. And so I'm not trying to say that technology is bad either. I want to be very clear about that. There is really not a good and bad when it comes to these neutral structures and forms. It's really about how it's being used and what is the purpose. So I would, I'll just complete there because I know that was a lot, but what I do see is definitely these parallel timelines. And when I peer down and kind of go Doctor Strange and like go all the way to the end of one and come back, go all the way to the end of that one, come back. And I've been doing that. I'm noticing that there's a few of them that don't look very good for humans. A few of these timelines that are being presented and in a way promoted to us very heavily look to me like systems of control that are not in favor or in support of the human spirit and our abundance in terms of being creators and knowing our own power, which I feel is part of the this social distancing. Part of keeping humans in fear and away from each other is not allowing us to feel the bioenergetic field of the plasmic dispensation that's pulsing into the planet right now. That if we were together, and those of us, if you have gathered with your friends, no matter what the government's telling you to do, and I'm not saying do this or do that, but if you have noticed that if you're around people, it feels really good. There's something life affirming. There's something inside of you that's beyond the story that was given to you by the news that's going, something about this feels healthy and true and right. And I'm filled with life, and I'm filled with purpose. I'm filled with guidance and direction as a result of this connection. I would just say, go with that feeling, trust that feeling, and it will keep you in track with the timeline that you're meant to be. Yeah.
Wow. Holy Moses, dude, that was such an amazing download, and also frightening, but like very resonant to everything that we've been talking about as well. Even just, conspiracy theory of everything. We did a video called Toxic Positivity about that same, like, on the kind of the new age mindset of just like, no, it's love and light all the time. We're not looking at that other stuff and being like, no, let's go deeper. Let's see what's really happening. And wanting to, it seems to be a big push that I'm on, my team is on, of just like, let's talk about just as much, if everyone's spending all this time on their devices anyway, so like let's get as much conversation, as much awareness as we can around these subjects of ascension, of the raising of the frequency of of higher consciousness, of what it looks like to embody the spirit of Christ, to embody the spirit of the, this, like, your soul, to be in a highest expression of your soul, in order to help like steer that collective field, because we're all individually steering it, even if, there are big powers that be, with trillions of dollars directing the course of humanity. And that's you nailed it too, with like the people saying like, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. Like, no, the UN or the Davos, the World Economic Forum are like, no, it's called the Great Reset. We're resetting society. Here's what we're doing. Right. Like it's they wrote a book about it. It's crazy. Yeah. And
I think they're laughing too at the confusion that's caused, and even getting their subjects to infight among each other, and no, that's a conspiracy. They would never do that to us. They care about us. And like, I'm sure there's like some amusement, from these people at the highest level we gave it all to them. We told them exactly what we're doing. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I've heard this said in multiple forms in different spiritual teachings, but also it just keeps coming around, this little jewel. And I wonder what you think about this, that there's almost like some karmic law that is a little bit of a loophole, and whether it's valid loophole or not, it's clear that it's being used a lot, which is that oftentimes these very power hungry kind of megalomaniacs, technocrats, what have you, will tell you exactly what they're doing as some kind of like get out of jail free card to, it's like, well, we told you, and you consented. So therefore, there's not the same kind of karma that if they were just totally sneaking and never told you what they're going to do and just laid it on you. They did actually say it. They did tell us, and yet, are we listening? Are we watching? And I think the challenge that is before us all right now is to be unlearning as much as we're learning and remembering, to be constantly clearing our hard drive, so to speak, like clearing our mind, clearing our thoughts of all the input, because there's this double speak that is happening, which is one of the let's just say it's one of the tactics to confuse, to confuse a natural, innocent, beautiful human being and with an open heart, an open mind. When you hear somebody tell you one thing and then they tell you the exact opposite, and they do that a few times, there's this internal confusion that that leaves you a bit in a swirl and out of touch and out of sync with what is actually true and what is actually being said. And do we wear a mask or do we not wear a mask? Like Fauci got on there and said, you don't need them. I wouldn't wear them. It's ridiculous to be walking around with. And then he gets on another channel and he says, oh, everybody knows. So that is intentional. And I just want to put that out there, that something to contemplate is there's an intentional confusion that's been introduced to keep this this frequency of chaos alive while they're continuing to just go down the list of their well-stated and well-written out plan. So if you can kind of pull back and out of the confusion and out of this or that about any particular issue, if you find that there's some like passion in you to fight these people because they said this and you know it must be this, and that is where they want us. That's where they want people to get caught in this these little tide pools of confusion, so we don't see actually what's coming down the river, which is a big giant waterfall that we may or may not want to go over. If you're prepared for it and you're like ready to hit that swan dive and you're like, okay, I see it coming and I'm gonna grow my wings at the last minute, or bam, I could just like grab a vine and swing over here to this timeline. But if you don't see it because you're too busy caught up in these little along the way, it'll come as a surprise. And so, so I feel like that's what many of us are up to as well during these times, is just, learning, listening, being as humble and still as possible, while at the same time really responding and showing up for what's ours to do. And that may be to take a certain issue and run with it. Maybe that is yours. Maybe your soul is here to bring about awareness around one thing. For me personally, I don't find that I'm called to speak or argue or spend a whole lot of time on some of the individual minute issues, because I'm actually in connection with others and councils who are really working on the larger timeline as a whole, and doing everything we can to create as much coherent possibilities for this timeline to unfold in grace and ease as possible. It's kind of like we're midwives, right? And we're all kind of like, somebody get a hot towel. All right, you grab some water. This earth is going through the birth right now. So we it's all hands on deck. That's all I'm going to say.
So, there's so many things to respond to there. The first is, I guess, just to answer your question of, I have heard that for years, actually. And maybe it's just, making spirit science, like, I have a lot of people throwing a lot of things at me, the comments, emails, everywhere. So I've seen that a lot before, of like, they're spelling it out, and getting those downloads. And, it's like that, looking at the big picture. I think the biggest challenge for people is that for people who are looking, seeing that there's the control and there's confusion, and what do we do? There's this question of like, it almost seems like it comes down to like system building, and like, how do you live your life and what systems do you live by? Because whether we like it or not, like you and I are doing this call on Zoom, it's going to be shared on, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube, and like, we're using the systems that are also being used to steer the mass consciousness in different ways. And we're not in the position where we're building the programmed systems, like the new social networks that are changing the landscape. So the question is, it's like, how do you help influence and steer this mass consciousness? And it seems as though it's like, it comes down to what you described of like working in bigger groups with people who are, and participating ourselves at the higher levels of, instead of the nitty gritty individual details of the Illuminati's plans, like what are we building? What are we creating in our little pockets of community, and getting more and more people to wake up? Like, the way that I think about it is like, if we make a lot of spirit science and it's illuminating consciousness, and then someone who works at Google, who maybe someone who's at the top of Google, finds spirit science and wakes up, then like now we've got someone on the inside, someone who's actually mindful, being like, ooh, we have to be aware of this, right? And like that seems to be the way to really, like, quote unquote, fight it, is not by actually fighting people, like the chaos that you described, but like doing something completely different and living the illuminated life and being like a beacon of light yourself.
Yes, well said, brother. And I will add this. I've had the pleasure of meeting quite a few people who are at the top of even some of these groups we've mentioned. I've been among them. I've played music for them. I've gotten to sit down and talk to some of them, and I've noticed that if we are in our heart and in our Christed heart, if you will, if we're really like connected to the source, everyone is just doing the best they can based on what they see and what they've been given and the role that they're playing. And if we really are tuned in to our source and allowing that to infuse and inform our choices and our movements, it's not so much that there's even something to push against anymore, because even those who are in those positions of power, it's almost like a bottle that's been capped for eons can still explode when shaken. There's still a chance that there's like an aha moment. And so what I want to say is that, I think one thing that limits the conscious community and those who know they're here to to be in harmony with this planet, there can be an almost like a response of confusion, anger, even rage against the machine, right? And so I just want to offer that don't underestimate the power of those well-placed souls inside of the system who themselves are also sensitive and attuned and maybe even just waiting for the wake-up call or for the bell to ring or for the right trigger to open their consciousness so that instead of pushing this button, they shut down the system or they close down some of these plans. So I do feel like there are those angels who are embedded within all of these groups, which means it's kind of like I don't know why I'm getting this memory of this book, The Fifth Sacred Thing. Did you ever read that book?
No, I haven't.
It's a really beautiful book by a woman named Starhawk, and it just kind of paints a picture of a potential timeline. If we were to play this thing all out, it's almost like there's these permaculture communities that just grow over some parts of these cities. It's a kind of like the shift has happened and there's like the military goes into one corner of the world and the permaculture organic people are all thriving over here. But then there's these inevitable like moments where they clash and they meet, and all the communities that are like growing their own food and working with natural medicines and connected to the earth have this thing where they say to even the kind of like brainwashed people, who are just playing out the orders, carrying out orders, and they come in and they're like, just like we're seeing with a lot of the police and a lot of these people who have been chipped, by the way, and I have compassion for them too. Even those who've gone into positions of wanting to help and they become police officers or military. My heart goes out to all of you because they're experimenting upon you. Like oftentimes, like these are the people that need the most help to transition out of those roles. And so, anyway, in this book, The Fifth Sacred Thing, they say there's space at our table for you. So even though they came in and they killed one of their own, they still show up and say there's still room at our table for you if you'd like to sit down and join us and meet and speak, because that level of openness for anyone playing any role at any time to shift. And I know this is a hard thing to say if you're like witnessing like Bill Gates or like some of these others who are obviously playing such a role of the, you just think like, could you get any more off from what is actually life? It's like if you take the word live and reverse it, it's evil, right? So it's like could you get any more evil, the opposite of life, to want to just like depopulate the planet and all these crazy things that it seems like they're wanting to do? But could we even leave a space in our heart for even them to have an aha moment and take that whole infrastructure and go like, oh my God, I can't believe I went so far down this track, because likely even they are being controlled by archons and other energies that are, it's just a lineage. It's a lineage of control and servitude. And so if we want to actually hold space for the new earth, that means it's not that we're here to save anyone, because we're not, but there is always a space for those who are ready to take a leap. And I have a feeling that there are a few players in certain key positions of this structure that we could view and we could judge as being bad or very harmful. And some of these key players have not yet shown their true colors and could likely turn the tides from within the system. So I just want to name that that's also a possible timeline that we can hold space for.
Yeah. I appreciate that perspective. And I one of the ways that I try to, or not try to, that it has come to me a lot when looking at the whole thing is that, there's often like that, like a pyramid description of the control system and the evil guys are at the top. But then I'm kind of like, well, okay, but there's got to be like a bigger pyramid where at the top of that one, of like the entire, like the creation of everything to the very source point is benevolent, because God, the creative power, the supreme spirit, the supreme oneness is benevolent. And I just like feel that and know that, and that, that is a guiding, both belief and knowing in my heart that moves through me and so many, right? And within this sort of awakening movement, that it's like the lesser pyramid is a part of the bigger story. And even in that, you can have kind of a compassion, because like nothing is outside of God. There's a very common, legendary quote of like, even the devil is not separate from God, because God is connected with and moves through everything, made everything, including those disconnected, separate, evil, angry, things. And so from that, like, just like, that like sort of supreme compassionate place, we can love the whole story, even the parts that are really uncomfortable, because in the grand scheme of things, it seems kind of like, a lot of people, when they go through a really difficult ordeal, but then they come out on the other side, they have the healing, whether it's through, just some cathartic release or plant medicine or, some spiritual change within them. Like, they're able to help those other people who are going through that same thing in a meaningful way. And it seems as though like our species is going through a really rough time, so that we can learn those really difficult lessons, and we can be like, we can heal to the depths of the pain that we've experienced, that we wouldn't be able to relate with it otherwise, had we never gone through it. So it seems almost like a necessary evil, as difficult as that is to, for so many people to hear. So you say that it's necessary. People are like, how could all of this evil be necessary, right? Because it's so dark. But it's the lessons that we're learning from it, even 100 years from now, or 100 years in the past, like the difference how much we've grown is exponential. And 100 years in the future, we'll be so much farther ahead, and we'll hopefully, ideally, have learned so much and have so much compassion for where we were going through the midst of this.
Really well said, brother. Yeah, it occurs to me as you're sharing this that the proof that it's necessary is the fact that it's here. Because if it wasn't here and it wasn't unfolding, then it wouldn't be necessary, because we wouldn't have created it into the hologram. So the fact that it's here and it's happening is proof that this is the necessary catalyst that we need. And how much further that goes, how much further we need to experience and explore this game of like separation, how much further could it possibly go before these, before the whole of humanity gets this aha moment? And I'm curious your thoughts on this. I used to feel driven deep inside, almost like I believe in humanity so much. I'm here to just love this planet, love these people, and almost like I felt like a cheerleader as a kid, like, come on guys, we can do this, And at the same time, I've noticed that where my own attachment and my own belief systems that were built up around how it needs to look have melted and melted and melted to the point where everyone is moving through this game in the way that their soul needs them to. And I guess what I mean by this is not everyone is going to wake up all at the same time. You know, there's waves and waves and waves. And so just to trust that process wherever you're at in the spectrum, if you see something and feel something and are aware of something and someone else isn't, it doesn't necessarily serve them for you to make it your life purpose to make them aware of what you're aware of. That there is potentially something that it's serving them to be in that state of awareness where they are for this moment until they meet the moment on the path that they have perfectly designed for themselves to have an aha moment to become aware of what you're aware of. And yet we as humans we're communal creatures. We want to share our experiences with each other. So it's like, if you know, brother, have this aha moment, of course you're going to be like, man, I want to call Elijah or like somebody else that like would get this and see if they know it too. So we can share this frequency of, wow, isn't this amazing that we can see and we're aware of this thing? But it's really taken me some time to come to this mature understanding that, especially when it comes to the shadow, to the other 180 degrees of the sphere, so to speak, the challenging aspects of our world, the things that are not comfortable to look at. There's, you know, an elder told me one time, you know, just be very awareful of the way that you are attached to waking other people up, because why would you want to wake someone up into a nightmare? So if there's something that you've become aware of that's like say child trafficking, for instance, horrible. It's horrible to know that this even exists. I've cried like so many tears just opening my heart and my awareness to the fact that children are being hurt in this way on this planet. And yet to someone who's just like, their job is to literally sing to the plants and the flowers, and they're outside in the garden doing that. For me to go to them and say, stop singing to the plants and the flowers, you need to know that this horrible thing is happening over here in the underground of the city, doesn't necessarily serve them in their role and their job of what they are doing and what they're here to do. So why am I saying this? It's because if we could expand and kind of mature our need to identify with everyone else as being aware of the same things at the same time, and rest into more of almost like a symphony, right? Where there's different instruments playing different roles. And the violins are not meant to sound like an oboe, and there's a reason for that. And you know, those who studied drums and got the rhythm and their body language to be able to really master that part are not meant to play a flute, you know, masterfully. So I just want to put that out there, just in the collective consciousness of our community and everyone who's listening here. It's just kind of like, you do you, boo, right? It's like, you do you and just hone in on your masterful role and play your instrument so well. And when you're aware of things, just notice what happens when you relax into that awareness and let it guide you from a more intuitive space, rather than the mind that wants to make it your life's purpose to make sure everybody is thinking and seeing it that way too, because that in and of itself is part of the control system mechanism that we need to kind of melt out of our biology, this need to conform everyone, even about the good things. We don't need to conform around anything because we're all playing our parts so perfectly. So, you know, I'll just put that out there to the ethers.
No, that's beautiful. And I also, you know, I've definitely, I both have heard that. I also have sort of come to that on my own, the resonant feeling. One of the ways that it was shared with me too is just like this, the mask of the ego of like the savior role, you know, feeling like you have to save everybody, you know, that is an egotistical desire, you know, because everyone's really on their journey and we have to be willing to honor it. And it, you know, the one of the ways that's come to me recently as I've also grown older, you know, like when I first started spirit science, it was very much like, look at this, look at that, look at this, you know, like all these things. And there's still a bit of that enthusiasm, you know, in just like the making of videos. Here's, you know, every week, here's 4 different videos of like new concept for anybody who's looking. But there's also this sort of like, I guess, as I'm peering into my own future timeline, I'm like, who do I want to be when I'm 80? You know, unless I'm embodying this, like, you know, sort of ascended master, and I still look like I'm 30, which would be great. I kind of imagine, you know, I'd like to fulfill like the archetype of Gandalf or Dumbledore or one of those like sort of wise, you know, Hermes Trismegistus, you know, like sages. And you just imagine having a conversation with them. It's like they understand so much more. And you look at, you know, the way that Gandalf talks to Frodo or Bilbo, or the way that Dumbledore addresses the students of Hogwarts. It's like he doesn't spell out every little thing and Voldemort's plans and stuff. It's like they provide the seeds of wisdom, the exact thing that the other needs to hear in order for them to have like the most resonant version of their journey and path. And so that seems to be this position that I'm trying to fulfill even for myself, is like, you know, be mindful of my own learning, share what comes naturally, and let others have their experience without, you know, as you described, like insisting that they understand at the level of the same frequency that you want them to, because everyone's kind of on their own thing. And it's reminding me of have you ever seen the movie They Live?
Oh yes.
Yeah. There's the one kind of the funny I think flip side of that argument is, you know, like that like kind of epic, what is it, like a 10-minute fight scene where the guy's like forcing him to wear the glasses.
Put these on, see what I'm seeing.
That's like the one time. I mean, it worked out in the end, but it was, you know, very much that kind of like insisting energy.
It wasn't necessarily the graceful path, and we all sat there watching this 10 minutes, like, wow, are they really just gonna keep going? But that was the Rowdy Piper style. It's like, come on, you got to see this, and there's space for that too. I love what you said, man, and I love that, you know, in reference to Gandalf, I recently rewatched the Lord of the Rings. It was time. It had been quite a few years, and I was like, okay, I know there's always more codes in that story every time I watch it or read the books. And so I was smiling as you were sharing that piece about your future timelines and who you're choosing to become, and the ways that wisdom is shared by those who have kind of attained a certain level of mastery is very true. And I don't know who originally spoke this quote, but I included it in the cover art of my very first album called The Preamble, which says, "Those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak."
That was Lao Tzu.
Yes, there it is. Yeah. Thank you. And so there's something to that. You know, there really is. There's a jewel there of, you know, nothing is mutually exclusive, but I think there is a tendency for those who've seen the realms and move through stages of their own mastery, that in a way it would steal the experience and the it almost, by providing, like you said, spelling out everything for someone who's just starting their journey, would inadvertently divert them from figuring out in their own way. And so I think a true master knows when to just be silent and actually allow someone to have their experience, which I'm feeling very much so in these times, rather than spelling it out on my social media or in every conversation. When I hear someone say something that doesn't necessarily ring true, instead of needing them to change their mind and showing them what I know and showing them what I've seen and make them read the documents that I have, it's like, no, read this so you can change your mind and see what I see. It's just, there's moments for that, but it's really about feeling where is there a space. And I think a great rule of thumb for those aspiring masters out there is just to really listen to when are you being asked for guidance? Is somebody coming to you and asking, hey, I'm really confused about this, and I'm seeking clarity on this mask issue and the science of it. Can you show me what you know? What do you think about it? That's different than somebody stating their opinion and then you taking upon yourself to be a social justice warrior, pound your keyboard angrily to get them to change their mind. This is two very different things. If somebody's asking, there's an opening. But if they're not asking, maybe consider just like leaning back into your truth and honing in on your journey. Take care of your garden. Go even deeper into your personal mastery at this time, because like we said in the beginning of this conversation, this is a moment of choice. There's a lot of choices being made, vibrationally speaking, and one of the most challenging universal laws to really, I think, wrap our minds and hearts around is the law of allowance, of really allowing each other as sovereign creators, even if it's like, well, they're being brainwashed and I want to wake them up. It's still at some level there's choice happening. So it's a delicate topic, but it reminds me, just to wrap this thought up, of the scene where Gandalf is like sitting by Frodo's bedside, and Frodo's kind of waking up out of this thing where he got stabbed by the and he's like, oh, where were you, Gandalf? Why didn't you meet us at the Prancing Pony or whatever?
Yeah.
And he has the flashback of like he went through like the hardest challenge of facing off with the White Wizard, and like got locked on the tower for a while, and then had to get the eagle. He had this whole journey, but he didn't like Frodo's fragile mind in that moment with that story. He just said, oh, I got held up, right? And I think that in and of itself is the wisdom that you're speaking to, which is to know, do we really need to add additional layers and baggage and burdens on someone's maybe not. There's a deeper listening in that. So I honor that you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, and he didn't make excuses either, right? Mm-hmm. Like it was like, oh, well, totally. I was delayed, done, yes. And it was it was just beautifully spoken. So like normally we schedule an hour for these calls. Do you have more time, or is this like a, you want to keep going, or is this we should start wrapping this up? We can definitely
hang for a few minutes over. We can hang for a few minutes over. I have another call in about half an hour. So if we maybe go for 10, 15 more minutes, I'm good.
Understood. Well, I'm loving this so much, and I want to but I also, have to honor your time, and I appreciate that a lot. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh. So yeah, it seems like it comes down to choice of the almost like this. It's like the people who are choosing to choose versus just going with what is being described. Because I've shared, like, there was a very interesting video that I found of a guy on YouTube. He was, it's like the YouTube channel is called like Facts Matter or something. And he's like, it's like a very professional looking news report. And he's like, here's some very interesting evidence of this whole voter fraud thing, with the whole election. And he's actually like breaking down, he shows like video clips of people of like, the, uncounted ballots being hidden that are like being pulled out on like a security camera and all this stuff. And like spelling out all these different things that alludes to a voter fraud. And I just was like, sharing this on Facebook, this is curious. What did people think about this? And I, attacked on one side, like, this is all wrong. This is all untrue. And it's like, there's the choice to explore it, whether it's true or not, of like, can we talk about any concept without the rigid, belief either way? And if not, like, what is it that compels us to, have such a staunch, rigid attachment to our paradigm of belief? What does it take to break someone out of, or for someone to break themselves out of their existing paradigm? Because when you tell someone that their paradigm is wrong in whatever capacity, normally that just causes them to entrench further in the, self-rightness of their own belief.
Yeah, very well said. In the same way that that a goddess who is feeling particularly challenged and upset, to tell her, calm down, will never actually help her calm down, right?
I didn't think of that. Yes, let me do that right now.
Never consider that. Right. In that same way, and I know that goes both ways, but with men too. It's like if you're going to tell someone to calm down when they're really upset, that's not going to help, right? So in that
a gentle reminder to breathe perhaps might be, at the very least, a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
But you raised a really important and I think a crucial contemplation for these times. And if nothing else, it's one of those keys to discernment, to notice where someone's at when you're speaking, or when you're even just coming across conversations and threads on social media, as it were, that if there is a defensive posture, like almost like an army battalion within their psyche to defend a position, then that right away is going to show you something about, where they're at on the ladder of consciousness, and what's available and what's possible. I find that by remaining neutral, because there's in the universe, there's positive, negative, and there's neutral. We forget about neutral. Neutral is an option. So vibrationally speaking, you can remain neutral about a subject and learn legions more than if you were all the way so sure of yourself about this side, or all the way so sure of yourself about this side. Just by remaining open, neutral, you can learn almost everything there is to know about something without really making a stand for it. And then from that place of knowledge and wisdom, just like with the wizards that you were describing before, kind of like is that so? When you're told something, right?
Yeah.
Even try that on for those of you out there. How does it feel vibrationally to be told something like, wearing masks saves lives? Is that so? I wonder.
Interesting?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Curious.
Or wearing masks actually is harmful for your health. Interesting. Let's see how that lands. And that's very interesting. And then from that space of neutrality, almost like venturing out and collecting all the jewels that you can. And then from that point, making a sovereign step or a choice based on experience, because knowledge plus experience equals wisdom, right? But we have this kind of addiction to knowledge, to facts. And yet when there is facts being provided for this and facts being provided for that, and they're countering each other, how does one know the truth in this minefield of information? It is very wise to stay neutral and collect as much information as you can from a point of, before you leap to that angry response because you're standing for something. Notice, what is that doing to your nervous system? Notice, is that the strongest position for your soul to take at this time? Is that going to serve moving forward your vision? Is that going to serve actually helping to build the world that we're here to build? So yeah, we'll just leave that on the table. Never forget, neutral, energetically speaking. I'm speaking physically, but I'm also speaking energetically here, that the way you hold yourself in your fields, it's a powerful tool. And I think that your description of Dumbledore and Gandalf is that oftentimes in a moment when they're sharing something, they're being neutral. They're not charged either way, and there's power in that. So I think that's something we could all adopt a bit more of in these times.
Yeah, I've only heard about this from one friend at one point. We've never seen a movie, a big screen adaptation of this particular concept, but regarding the Jedi and Star Wars and that whole, dark side of the Force versus the light side, apparently, at least in the lore that I guess is no longer lore, in the whole like Disney, this and that, there's a middle ground Jedi where you've got the dark Jedi, the light Jedi, but you've also got the gray Jedi, who are like neutral in the middle, and they, kind of can move between the states, depending on what's necessary. Like, not saying the light side is better than or worse than, but sort of existing in that harmonious middle. It almost sounds like a place to be. It gets maybe this Gandalf the Grey, although I guess he kind of had to ascend in order to mirror the other side of the dark, because that the shadow was growing as well. But
he stepped it up on behalf of the greater mythos, to play his part. But that's the thing, is like, it's both fun and illuminating to explore this, and just to even have the awareness that it's not that we have to be neutral all the time, because there's a moment to take a stand for something and say, I will do this because I believe in this and this is what I'm standing for. This is so important. So I'm not actually wanting to diminish the power of taking a stance, but just noticing the emphasis and almost like the promotional campaign, even the act of voting, going to the polls. The polls, if you think about it in terms of electrical and magnetism, you're going to one extreme or another. The polls, right? So if you go to the polls and you have an election, that's electricity. These are all concepts of current, right?
You are blowing my mind right now. I never considered this relationship. Keep going. So keep going. I'm just
everything. If you explore the etymology of all of these structures, they're all based on current, and they're based on actually grabbing your current to power something, because you have to go to a pole in order to direct this current.
Direct
and
the
what
current.
Are you directing it for? So you're directing it for a system that I just am questioning if it's has anything to do with the world you actually want to build. So really, if your energy is being used to direct all of this current, and you're being, kind of like strong-armed to vote and go to the polls and elect, and then there's the electoral, which at the end of the day, it's not even up to the people. There's like this electoral vote that happens, right? And it's like, so you realize there's all these different levels of the current that are just helping to harness and gather energy. And those who have been studying, I know there's some who are listening right now that I just want to acknowledge you, who've been studying alternate timelines, alternate history. There's this whole, I don't know if you've gotten into this whole study of Tartaria, this great nation that used to be on all the maps up until about 300 years ago, and then it got taken off all the maps. And we were not taught about this nation, this great civilization known as Tartaria. But there's this growing body of work and study around some of the ancient technologies that were very much in play and harnessed, it's just kind of a word that's become a bit trendy called antiquitech, right? This technology of antiquity. And an example of that would be at the top of all the steeples of all the temples, right? There's generally some kind of metallic designed object that in today's mind we would think of it as being either a cross or a Christian thing or a religious thing. But if you look at all the technology of the past, on tops of all the buildings there would be these balls that are filled with mercury, and generally the tops of the steeples, or even the really nice Tunisian round ones, would be covered in copper. And these are actually atmospheric collection devices that would power these buildings and heat the buildings in these temples from atmospheric energy. So why am I bringing this up? Because there is a history that's been hidden from us of the awareness and knowledge of collecting free energy to power and grow worlds. And yet, what do we do today? We have to pay for our power. So who are we paying? Okay, if you follow the thread, or as they say, follow the money, the Rothschild family, I believe, owns pretty much most of the world's power companies. So basically every power company, no matter what country you're in, could be traced back to a certain family that's kind of taken that upon themselves to control this collection and direction of power or energy. And this is related to the polls and what we were just talking about in the election and the structures of government. So just go with me for one more minute here, which is, if you were to imagine that you figured out how to harness and collect energy that's free, that's part of just this plasmic electromagnetic field of being on the planet, just like Tesla was onto it, right? Others have been onto it. Like, there's energy all over the place. It's in the air. It's just about harnessing it, collecting it, and directing it, right? Now, if you figured out how to collect all of this energy for free, but then you were selling that power to the people, that would make you what?
Very wealthy.
Very wealthy. And if that became, the way that you built your great, wealth, or at least one of them, would you want to give that up and just let people figure out how to collect that energy for themselves and power their own communities and houses and cities? Probably not. You'd probably get a little bit attached. And so just putting it out there.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So just putting it out there into the field that, I'm sharing this from a place of not just, I'm not theorizing here. I like Neo in the Matrix. I had a moment where I actually sent my consciousness, like my light body. I was astral traveling, and I decided I don't actually know, because I've never been taught and I've never seen it, and we're not even allowed to see it. Where does all the power come from, and what's happening at these power stations? So I followed, kind of like, in the end of the Matrix, he has to follow the power lines back to the source.
Yeah.
So I did that with my spirit. I sent my consciousness and followed the power lines. And what I saw is that there is power being collected for free and sold back to the people. And that in and of itself, I think, is a symbol of a lot of these themes that we've been talking about and exploring today, which is at a fundamental level, if we are in harmony with life and we are connected to source, we're sourced. So that means we don't have to look to a priest or a system to connect to that source, whether it be for our concepts and journeys as a soul, whether it be for the way that we get our food, whether that be the way we get our power. So really, this year is kind of bringing right into the mirror, what is our relationship to sovereignty? Are we truly sovereign? Is that something that we value? Is that something that we are willing to actually, deepen and release whatever patterns and belief systems that are keeping us from our sovereignty? Is that something we value? And to me, the answer is yes. I value sovereignty. I value this experience of what it is to be alive and explore and feel connected to source and not be told how to connect to source. And yet I'm also, like you, living in a system where I'm paying for power that is being collected for free. I'm paying for food that I probably could have grown myself and figured out a way to do it if I really put some energy into. I got a long ways to go to get sovereign. And so wherever we're at on the spectrum, put that on your altar and contemplate your relationship to sovereignty and also our dependence on some of these systems. And it would behoove all of us to take some steps towards sovereignty and make some real commitments to that as we move into this solstice time, because this is part of what is going to place us on the timelines, accordingly, vibrationally speaking. If we are complacent and happy to just be a part of a system where we're plugged into all these different people to give us our ideas and our beliefs and our everything, here you can't even eat real food. And we've got like lab grown meat for you now. We've got lab grown this and lab grown that, and this is what you're going to eat because that's just part of the Green New Deal. If we're cool with that, just know that likely we're going to be having a very different experience of our sovereignty than those who are tending the seeds and actually, staying attuned to this natural cycle of life. So, that's what it is.
Man, we could just go and go. Like I have so many more just reflections and questions, and I have to honor your time and say, wow, Elijah, man, I'm so grateful to have you on this show today. And like already, I can't wait to have you back. Like this was so special. So thank you so very much. In sort of like a closing, wrapping up of the of everything that we've talked about here, do you have, like, if you were to put it all into a cohesive like single sentence or paragraph or idea to like give people just like one final, here's like a seed or a seed of truth that they can plant within their hearts, like what would you say, what would you give to people?
That's a really wonderful question. And before I answer that directly, I do want to say thank you and share and flow that appreciation right back through you for having me here. I feel the same as you, that we could likely talk for another 3 hours.
Oh, easy.
Easy.
And
and so I would like to offer a closing thought or two. And firstly, what I want to say is that we each and every one of us have higher self, soul, connection to source. We can call it whatever we want, but if we close our eyes and tune into it and even just feel our heart beating and pulsing with life, to nurture and honor and guard that connection is first and foremost. And if I had to kind of encapsulate, because we've really brought a lot of amazing, interesting topics up in this conversation, and I appreciate the spaciousness in here. I appreciate the spaciousness of this this exchange very much. It's not often I speak out or get a chance to speak and converse in this way. Generally, I keep it pretty well focused and centered on the music in terms of how I show up.
we didn't even talk about music.
Yeah, because that's really, that's really at the end of the day, that's the medicine that I feel is the most helpful way for me to share even all these areas and explorations of consciousness, is that there's a way that you can speak through even just a tone. Yeah. Like a home tone where you can just hum into your heart. And that could actually provide the environment in which you're situated in with more value than trying to talk and change people's minds. Sometimes just a simple hum can affect the room in a more coherent way than trying to use the mind and all this electrical activity to try to engage, right? So that is one of the reasons that, again, I love that Lao Tzu quote, those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak. So we've done a lot of speaking here in the excitement of exploration. But if I was to, as per your question, kind of wrap it all into a distillation, I would really say, listen to the music inside of you and move with it. Let it move you. Let it inform you. Because in the same way that we each have a higher self or a connection to our source, we each have a radio station of that source inside of us, that if we quiet all the noise enough, it's right there waiting to guide, direct, protect, reflect, and move us. And as we navigate through this realm, it's what in the mythos of the wingmakers, they call this the wholeness navigator. It's like comes pre-installed as part of our human instrument. And this wholeness navigator is, if we could become still and quiet enough to hear it, contains every word, every movement, every action, everything we need in terms of our next steps, how to talk, how to be, how to respond, how to carry ourselves. Because the language of the mind is words, but the language of the heart is behaviors. So really to go deeper into a kind of more of an emotional intelligence and a behavioral intelligence is I feel our next frontier as human beings. We've got all the words are there, all the books are there, all the knowledge is here. The tomes are stacked high, and we can learn about anything we need to learn about at this point. But what is often missing from the situation is behavioral intelligence, how to move through and navigate this realm in a coherent way. And that wisdom comes from this music that's inside of you. So my sentence would be still and know yourself as source. Listen to the music and let it guide you. And we will find ourselves surrounded by the other souls who've listened to that same music, and we will rejoice and celebrate. Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. So for anybody who's tuning in and they want to find you and they want to connect more with the magic of Elijah Ray, where can they go to find you?
Well, there's many places you can connect in. Instagram, I'm Elijah Ray Music pretty much all the socials. You can find me at Elijah Ray Music.
Uh-huh.
There's ElijahRayMusic.com as well, and
Mhm.
which is going to be, I would say, an important place for people to stay connected and in tune, because we're about to launch a new project with a bit of a new platform to connect directly with the Band of Light community and the fans and friends out there. So definitely go to the website and sign up for the mailing list if you want to kind of be kind of in the know where we're going and where the ship's gonna land next. The love streams are a great way to get connected just to the energy. The full moon and new moon love streams are always a
Yeah.
deep joy to connect to. And I do keep the words to a minimum and the music and the vibrations to the max on there. So I'm not really speaking too much, but it's been an honor to share and speak with you today and just let our hearts kind of flow and navigate through these topics and these different perspectives. And at the core of it all is I really want to acknowledge your deep devotion and the way you've stayed committed to the path and your personal growth, and the way that you share that and make that available for others is really inspiring. And that's one of the reasons we get along so well, that no matter what the ups and downs are of the journey and the lessons of the light and the lessons of the shadow, there's something in the center of all that remains true and consistent and clear. And so I just want to honor you for that. And to everyone who's listening, I send my love and deep aloha from my heart to yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And as a final thought too, I do have to say for everyone listening, like Elijah, his music, if you haven't heard it, just go and find it, whether it's, even on, his website or his live streams or Spotify or Bandcamp. I bought all of your music on Bandcamp before because, and it changed my life and healed my heart on levels that I can't even describe. Like I had gone through a really rough time. Well, 4 years ago, I'd come out of this really terrible, just really difficult relationship, a really difficult period of turbulence in my life. And it was your music, Elijah, that I just it was like all I was listening to it when I slept, when I was driving, I was singing along with it when I worked, when I was making my Patch to Row or Spirit Science episodes. It was like this constant thing. And it elevated my heart, and it just brought me to levels of joy that I hadn't felt in so long. It's so beautiful, so sacred. There's so much love in your work, and I want the whole world to know about it. So, yeah, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for being such a shiny, brilliant mirror presence. I love you so much, and love everyone out there. We'll talk to you again soon.
Love you too. Peace out. Bye, everyone.
Aloha.